Hi, I'm Myra from Kentucky, and I lived a pretty average life with my ordinary mom and dad who I thought were good, honest people. I was so wrong, but we'll get back to that. I was an only child, so I got all their attention and I got my way most of the time. When I was 12 years old, I begged them to let me go to summer camp because I heard that Ron was going to be there and he'd been my crush since kindergarten. Rumor had it, he liked me too, and this was going to be the camp that would seal the deal forever. Little did I know that my romantic aspirations would land me in a hospital bed surrounded by confused doctors and nurses. This story gets even crazier, so don't go anywhere.
Is she dead?
No, she's just unconscious, but she's breathing. More hives are popping up. Oh my gosh!
I've never seen this before. What do you think it could have been? Poison ivy? A snake bite?
I try to remember what happened right before I passed out. I was walking hand in hand with Ron. We had just explained our feelings to each other after sneaking away from some silly kind of scavenger hunt. There were trees all around us. We looked around to make sure no one was looking, and then he kissed me. It was so amazing. I felt butterflies, stars, bliss, and then I blacked out. My parents arrived while the doctors were trying to figure out what was wrong with me. They tried everything they could, but I wasn't able to go home for another 3 days. When I got home, my parents decided to interrogate me, and I didn't realize it then, but they seemed a bit suspicious. Where were you when you blacked out? Who were you with? What were you doing? I just sat there in silence because obviously I couldn't tell them I was in the forest kissing some boy. Anyway, summer ended and I couldn't wait to go back to school so I could see Ron again. I spent 3 hours choosing my outfit so he could be impressed and ran out the door on Monday morning. As soon as I saw Ron in the hallway, I dragged him into an empty classroom. I missed you so much, Ron. I think we should continue from where we left off. I missed you too, Myra, but I think... But I didn't allow him to finish. I pressed my lips onto his and went in for another deep kiss. Then suddenly, the room went black. And yep, you guessed it. I woke up in the hospital again. I was covered in hives, but this time I had a terrible headache and I was throwing up. My mom was already by my side. What were you doing just before this happened? We need to know so we can find out what's causing this reaction. It was only then I realized I was allergic to kissing. But of course I told my mom I ate some bad fish and she left it at that. Throughout middle school, I had to avoid boys. Ron had moved on, but I didn't really care because I had joined my school's cheerleading team and I was too busy cheering to think about boys. A few years later, I started high school and I continued avoiding boys as usual. I joined the cheer squad and I was having a great time. But after cheering during a basketball game one day, I noticed this super hot guy checking me out.
He is totally checking you out, Myra.
My best friend Crystal whispered into my ear.
Why don't you go talk to him?
I don't chase, I attract. If he's interested, he'll come to me. It was almost like he heard me because he walked up to me that minute. Hey girl, let me tie your shoes because I don't want you falling for anyone else. What makes you think I've fallen for you? I don't even know you. Well, why don't we change that, babe? Let's go out later. Send me your address and I'll pick you up. By the way, my name is Tyrone. I'll learn yours later. He walked away before I could reply. Gosh, he was hot. So what do you think I did? Of course I went out with him, and we had a great time. He drove a Ferrari, and after a few weeks of dating, I realized that his family was really wealthy. He bought me all kinds of gifts and treated me like I was a princess. We eventually became a couple, but something was different about him. He felt comfortable with me hanging around his guy friends. Most guys don't like their girlfriends to be around their boys, but he wanted to bring me everywhere. I was totally in love. His friends were always at his house, especially his best friend Marvin, who was a total goofball. But because his house was so big, Tyrone and I would still have a lot of privacy. And well, I guess privacy is what caused our problems because... Come closer, I want to hold you. Okay, Tyrone, but don't try anything, okay? What do you mean? Nothing. We hugged for about 5 minutes, then he looked me in the eyes and lifted my chin towards his mouth. I quickly turned away. I just remembered that my mom asked me to be home by 5. I have to go, sorry. And this was how I dodged Tyrone for months. I just had to escape whenever he tried to kiss me. But the sad thing is that I could see he was becoming less interested in me. We started hanging out less and less, but it hurt me so much because I seriously loved him. I felt like there was nothing I could do because how exactly do you tell your boyfriend you're allergic to kissing? I was feeling down one day and my mom made me her famous chocolate muffins. She made them every month and I always felt better after having them. That day, I decided I wouldn't take it anymore. I would tell him the truth. When I got to his house, Marvin was in the living room with 2 of Tyrone's other friends, and he looked shocked to see me there.
What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
I came to see my boyfriend. Is he in his room?
Yeah, no, I don't think you should go up there.
Why?
Hang out with us instead.
I thought that Marvin was just being his usual silly self, so I ran up to Tyrone's room. The door wasn't closed, so I peeked in and I'll never forget what I saw. My best friend was in the arms of my boyfriend and they were making out. She was doing things to Tyrone I only wished I could do. I wanted to scream. Crystal, you home-wrecking piece of...
Myra, it's not what it looks like.
Crystal picked up her things and ran out of the room. She didn't even try to explain herself, but what Tyrone did next really broke my heart.
She does all the things you don't. I think we need to break up. Let me explore my options.
Tyrone, you're a jerk. But don't worry, you're going to regret this. I left his house angrily, and when I got home, Crystal was there. She tried to explain that she noticed that Tyrone was losing interest in me, and she was only trying to persuade him not to leave. The kiss sort of happened in the middle of all that. I pushed her outside and slammed my door. I definitely didn't need fake friends like her in my life. Anyway, one thing I like about guys is that they're super easy, and I figure that if Tyrone could run around with my best friend, ex-best friend, like that, I'd do the same to him. I started texting Marvin until I got him interested enough to go out with me.
You know I always liked you. I just couldn't say anything because you were in a relationship with my homie. But I think you're really pretty, and you look really nice in those cheerleader outfits.
Wow, thanks, Marvin. We were strolling through a park after a wonderful date. I asked him to come to my house because I knew my parents wouldn't be there. He sat on my couch watching TV while I texted Tyrone telling him I was in tears and I really wanted him to come over so we could talk. I even told him I'd make out with him if he did. I explained that the door was open and I was in the living room so he could just walk in. When he texted back,
I'm on my way.
I could have jumped for joy. I started whispering sweet nothings into Marvin's ears, and we were getting pretty cozy. When I heard the door open and footsteps come towards the living room, I put my head close to Marvin's to make it seem like we were kissing. But when I looked up, I saw my dad staring straight into my face.
Myra, what are you doing? Stop that right now. What do you think you're doing making out with boys in my house?
Then, to add more trash to the dumpster fire, Tyrone walked in, and it was clear that he had heard everything.
You were making out with Marvin? Marvin, how could you? You're supposed to be my best friend.
He burst out into tears, and it was so satisfying that I didn't even care that my dad had walked in on me pretending to make out with a boy. Marvin, we'll talk later.
Get out of my house, both of you. And you, young lady, go to your room.
It's the first time I was actually excited about being punished because I knew I accomplished something remarkable. I sabotaged Tyrone's greatest friendship, and I didn't regret a thing. I scrolled through my phone and deleted his number along with Marvin's and Crystal's. Now I just had to deal with my parents who eventually burst into my room to give me what I thought would have been a lecture.
Good job, sweetheart.
I'm proud of you, and it seems you've learned your lesson. What are you talking about, Mom?
Well, I know you didn't kiss either of those guys. You're a good girl.
Okay, but how do you know that, and why does it even matter? I'm 16.
We have something to tell you, honey.
You know these chocolate muffins I always make once every few months? The ones you love? Yeah? Well, they've got a substance in them which makes you react if your mouth comes into contact with anyone else's saliva. Basically, we made you allergic to kissing. What? That's insane! But why?
So you wouldn't kiss anyone. We want you to remain pure and innocent because we've already promised you to someone. Basically, your marriage has already been arranged, but his parents are very traditional, if you understand what I mean. The purer you are, the more money we can get for you. They've promised us a handsome sum.
You're joking, right? No. You'll meet him when you turn 18. We've arranged everything. But what if I don't want to?
Then we will stop taking care of you. We won't pay for college, we won't support you financially, and we'll simply disown you. We're your parents, so we make the rules.
I couldn't understand what was going on. I ran out of my room and onto the street with tears in my eyes. How could they do this to me and think it was okay? I was so blinded by my tears that I didn't see a car heading straight towards me. I felt unimaginable pain surging through my body, and then I blacked out. When I woke up, I knew I was in a hospital, but something was different about this room. I was freezing, and when I opened my eyes, I saw nothing but darkness. I tried to lift my arm, and it was then I realized I was in a body bag. I started screaming, but stopped to think of what this could mean for me. If my family thought I was dead, this could mean I could start over and escape from it all. So that's exactly what I did. I snuck out of the hospital and ran as far as my aching legs could take me. I'm still trying to figure out my life now, but I'm free.
Hi, my name is Latoya and I'm from the Caribbean. I never expected I'd have the school bully wrapped around my finger. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. When I was 5 years old, my parents died in a car crash and I was sent to live with my grandmother. That's where I met Keegan, my best friend and our neighbor. In our town, everyone knew we were pretty tight-knit. I loved our quiet little part of paradise. In 4th grade, everything changed when the Pillage family came to town. They bought a few of the stores and turned them into large shopping malls. Not only was our town no longer quiet and peaceful, but the Pillage's son, Victor, was in my class, and he became the school bully, even to the teachers. During 5th grade, Victor stuck a sign on my back which said, "Pinch me." Every person I passed in the hallway that day pinched me until Keegan pulled it off. Once, on a field trip in 6th grade, Victor locked me in the bathroom. The janitor unlocked it about 30 minutes later, and I got detention for a week for separating from the group for over 5 minutes. Can you believe it? Then, in 7th grade, during the talent show while I was singing, Victor rigged a bucket of ice water to fall on my head during my Stella performance. I was sick for 3 days. In 8th grade, he stuck glue to my chair, and when I stood up, my skirt ripped. The entire class laughed at me as I shimmied out of the class with books covering my behind. I had to wear boys' pants from the Lost and Found. Ew. It didn't matter what Victor did, he always got away scot-free because his parents donated large sums of money to the school. One summer, Keegan and I sat on the swings in front of Grandma's house. I wish I didn't have to go back to school. I can't stand Victor. Why can't they just send him to a boarding school or something since they have all that money? Victor isn't so bad. Isn't so bad? May I remind you of everything he's done to me since his family set foot in this town. Before I could ramble on, Keegan leaned sideways in the swing and captured my lips with his. When we pulled apart, I was breathless and speechless. My, Keegan chuckled. I think I found the secret to snatching your words away from you. I pulled Keegan in for another kiss, and it was his turn to be speechless. I've had a crush on Keegan since I was about 5, but I didn't want to ruin our friendship. I was just happy that he felt the same way about me. That summer, Keegan and I were inseparable, and Grandma kept telling me it was just puppy love. I couldn't wait to walk to school hand in hand with my new boyfriend on the first day of school. But that didn't go as planned. When I got to Keegan's house, his mother, Mrs. Hines, said he'd already left. When I got there, I realized his hurry to get there. His tongue was wrestling with Harper. What the freaking heck, Keegan? I thought you were my boyfriend. Latoya, did I ever ask you to be my girlfriend? No. Harper, will you be my girlfriend?
Sure.
And they began to kiss again right there in front of me. I ran all the way to the girls' bathroom and hid in a stall. I heard a notification on my phone and checked it. A shiver ran down my spine as I played the video. Someone recorded what just happened between me and Keegan and posted it on social media. A tiny logo on the side of the video read Victor's Videos. I stormed out of the bathroom in search of Victor, and when I found him, I wanted to punch him in the face. I found Victor chatting with a group of boys. Victor, you jerk! I swung at him, but he sidestepped and I landed in the bin behind him. He and his friends laughed and walked away. This year was supposed to be my best year yet. It was only the first day and already my year had gone to trash. Or so I thought. One day, the district superintendent, Mr. Flynn, was to pay a visit to the school. Our principal, Mr. Burns, ensured that the school was spick and span for his arrival. That's when I saw Victor spray painting a picture of the principal with his finger up his nose on the back of the school wall. Ahem. Victor spun around. It seems as though you're somewhat in a predicament here, Victor. I wonder what Mr. Burns will do if he sees this video. My lips curled into an evil smile. I've waited for a day like this forever, and I wasn't gonna let it slide.
My parents own this school. I can do whatever I want.
Okay, I shrugged and walked away. Later that morning, when Mr. Burns found the painting, he was furious. He called an emergency assembly to address the school.
The person who vandalized the school wall needs to step forward immediately. The longer you wait, the worse your punishment is going to be.
Mr. Finn shook his head and grabbed the mic from Mr. Burns.
This is a very serious matter, punishable by law. When you are caught, the police will be called.
I spotted Victor in the crowd and his face was white. After the assembly, he approached me.
Name your price.
I thought your parents owned the school.
Name your price.
The price is you, Victor. Enjoy today because tomorrow, you're mine. I patted him on the shoulder as I brushed past him. The next day, boy did I have fun bossing Victor around. He had this coming for years. I made him do all my homework, feed me at lunch, and wipe the side of my mouth, and give me piggyback rides to class. I also made him apologize to every person he'd ever been mean to.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Victor looked at me after 2 weeks. What will mommy and daddy think about their perfect little boy being dragged away by police officers? I don't think that'll be a good look for their business. Do you? Victor cringed, then went back to feeding me grapes. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Keegan rolled up beside me on his skateboard. Hey Latoya, how have you been? I ignored Keegan. Come on, babe, we used to be such good friends. I heard that Harper dumped you. According to her, you don't have what it takes to keep her. I looked Keegan up and down. You witch. Keegan pushed me into the road and skateboarded away. I heard the sound of a horn followed by screeching tires. Bang. I opened my eyes to see a car smashed into a tree. It must have skirted away to avoid running me over. I ran towards the car. It was Mrs. Hines. My eyes clouded with tears as I flagged down an oncoming car. Please, help her! I screamed. It was Victor. Victor and his driver hopped out of the car. While the driver called for help, Victor held me. Once Mrs. Hines was safely in the ambulance, Victor offered me a lift home. We sat silently in the back seat as tears continued to stream down my face. Keegan's mom could be dead because of me. Well, also because of Keegan, since he was the one who had pushed me onto the road in the first place. Victor took my hand and held it until I reached home. Thank you. I hopped out of the car and ran inside to tell Grandma about Keegan's mother. Unfortunately, Mrs. Hines didn't make it, and Keegan had the audacity to blame me. I thought Victor was bad, but Keegan was 1,000 times worse. After what happened to Mrs. Hines, I had a change of heart towards Victor. I figured life was too short to keep enemies. I preferred to have friends. Here you go.
What are these?
Cupcakes. I baked them myself.
Do they have laxatives in them or something?
No, silly, I just wanted to say thanks for what you did a few days ago. And I'm releasing you from your servant duties. I promise I won't tell anyone that you painted the principal on the school wall. Victor and I heard a gasp behind us, and we spun around. So, you're the culprit, huh? LaToya may not tell your secret, but I will. Keegan, you can't. I can and will, but I'll make an exception if you give me a kiss right here and right now. I stepped towards Keegan and he smiled. I was about to kiss him when Victor pulled me away and punched Keegan in the stomach. The boys wrestled on the ground until Keegan was able to get away from Victor. I'm gonna tell Mr. Burns you're both going to pay for this. Keegan sprinted in the direction of Mr. Burns' office and Victor and I chased behind him. The three of us burst into Mr. Burns' office at the same time. I was the one who painted the picture of you on the wall. I blurted out before Keegan could say anything. Keegan and Victor were chased out of the office. A few minutes later, a police car arrived and I was taken to the station. Shortly after, Grandma arrived at the station, followed by Victor and his parents who looked furious. I watched as Grandma pulled Victor's parents to the side and chatted with them. Victor stared at me from across the room, but he didn't make any attempt to come towards me. Grandma and I left 15 minutes later, but Victor and his parents were still chatting with an officer. Later that night, the doorbell rang and I answered.
No one has ever stood up for me before, not even my parents.
Maybe it's time to change all that. Before I knew what I was doing, I leaned forward and kissed Victor. I was super happy when he kissed me back. Suddenly, I was yanked away and I heard the front door slam.
After what that boy just put you through, you're standing out there kissing him. You better get some sense quickly, LaToya. You need to stay away from that boy. He's a troublemaker.
But there was something about Grandma telling me not to do something that made me want to do it even more. So, I did. Victor and I began to spend a lot of time together before and after school. I thought finally life was going to be smooth sailing from now on, but it definitely wasn't. At the championship congratulatory party for our football team, Keegan approached the mic. First, he congratulated the school on their team win, and then he said something that changed my life forever.
I have a question for the crowd tonight. Have you guys and gals ever dated a member of your family?
The crowd began to boo and jeered at Keegan as cups and soda cans made their way to the stage.
You guys and gals might think it's gross, but Victor and LaToya don't think so. Victor, my man, how does it feel to date your niece?
Victor and I looked at each other, startled. The crowd booed us and began to throw trash at us. They chased us out of the school compound. Do you think what Keegan said was true?
Nah, babe, I think he's just messing with us.
We got to Grandma's. Let's go inside. I'm gonna ask Grandma. Victor hesitated, but he followed me inside. I found Grandma in the kitchen.
What is he doing here?
I'll answer your question if you answer mine. Why did Keegan just make an announcement to the entire school that Victor is my uncle? Grandma seemed shook. She sat on the chair and folded my arms across my chest and tapped my foot. Well, we're listening. Grandma sighed. Then she explained everything.
When Granddad was away on business for 2 years early in our marriage, I had an affair and had Victor's dad. I didn't want the baby to ruin my marriage, so I put him up for adoption.
All this time, my father has been mistreating me because of his abandonment issues that you caused?
But why didn't you say something after Granddad passed away?
Because I didn't need to. It's my business.
We're dating, Grandma. I've been dating my uncle for 6 months.
Victor is not your uncle. He's not his father's son. His father got into an accident as a young child, and because of it, he'll never be able to have children of his own.
I spun around to speak to Victor, but he was gone. I ran out of the house and saw him running down the street. Victor, wait! Victor hadn't heard that last bit that Grandma had said. Victor still thought he was my uncle. I had to tell him the truth. Hi, my name is Melissa and I'm from Montreal, Canada. You know how everyone has flaws? Mine is that I'm too cute, and trust me, it's ruining my life. Before I explain how, please like and subscribe.
We can keep one twin each. Melissa is mine.
No, Melissa is mine. You take Mora. I will not let you separate me from my baby girl.
Listen, Janet, I won't let you take her. She's the one who got my genes after all.
Are you calling me ugly?
No, that's not what I meant. Well, your personality, yes, but...
My parents had a sliding door in their room which led to a balcony, and we lived on the 4th floor. Suddenly, I saw my mom push my dad out of the door and shove him over the balcony. He was hanging onto the railing by one hand, and then just like that, he was gone. Well, he didn't die, but he hurt himself really badly. My mom went to prison for attempted murder, and my dad ended up getting custody of both of us in the end. I guess you could say that this was the first tragedy caused by my cuteness. I have a fraternal twin sister named Mora, and this means we don't really look alike. When we were kids, everyone liked me more. I was the favorite because somehow I got all the cuteness. Poor Mora was just an average-looking kid, and sometimes people totally ignored her if we were in the same room. She didn't seem to mind though, and we got along pretty well until we were about 5 years old. That was when my parents couldn't stand each other's guts anymore. They decided to get a divorce, and they would always fight about who would get to keep me. Neither of them cared about who would get Mora, and I think that made her a bit sad. That night that I walked in on them arguing stuck with me for life. Have you ever witnessed one of your parents trying to hurt each other and it was all your fault? I didn't only get all the attention at home. At elementary school, everyone wanted to be my friend. Even the teachers wanted to have lunch with me, especially Miss Mendez, my math teacher. I got top marks in her class, even though I still use my fingers to count today. She brought me little presents every day, and I think it made some of my classmates jealous. Mora was in my class too, and she treated her like she simply wasn't there. But I found out that it was more than my cuteness that was causing her to be so nice to me. One night, I was in the middle of a good dream when I woke up and started to feel really thirsty. I went down to the kitchen to get some water, and Miss Mendez was in my house, wearing a really sexy nightgown. What are you doing here? Am I in a dream? I don't have to do math, do I? No, darling. Just go back to bed. My dad walked in and looked shocked, then embarrassed.
We'll talk about this in the morning, honey.
It turns out Miss Mendez was having an affair with my dad, and she was just being nice to me because she was trying to be my stepmom. I don't know why she never tried to win Mora over too, though. I continued to have an awesome life until I started high school. It seemed that all the girls had developed over summer, all of them except me. Their bodies looked amazing, and the worst thing was that Mora's did too. She had curves, boobs, everything. And I still looked like a child.
Ha ha ha, Melissa, you're still so flat.
Look at the adorable little baby.
Come, let me pull your cheeks.
All of you shut up and leave me alone. I was starting to hate everyone at school, and I began to hate Mora even more because I was just so jealous. I wasn't used to not being the center of everyone's world. I was literally dying inside. Mora started getting attention from guys and had even been asked out a few times. But guys didn't even look at me if it wasn't to say, "Aw." After the Christmas vacation that same year, I decided to make myself look more attractive. I was sick of being the high schooler who still looked like a kid. So before leaving home on my first day of school, I filled up 2 balloons with water and stuffed them in my bra. I put on a waist slimmer too, and when I looked in the mirror, I was actually impressed. I looked hot. I finally had that hourglass shape. I walked to school in style, and everyone stared as I passed by. At school, people noticed me, and guys who never spoke to me before asked me for my name and number. I felt like I was on top of the world. But it seemed like there's a storm after every rainbow. You won't believe the utterly embarrassing thing that happened to me next. During math class, my teacher asked me to come up to the whiteboard and solve an equation. When I was done, I turned around waiting for everyone to clap for me. That was when Trevor, the class idiot, decided to throw a paper plane at the teacher's head. She dodged it, bumped into me, and went crashing into the wall. When I turned around, everyone stared at me silently. And then, the class was filled with laughter. I looked down at my shirt, and there was water dripping everywhere.
You put water balloons in your bra? Oh my gosh, somebody record this. How pathetic.
I ran out of the class crying. When I got home, I locked myself in my room and refused to come out for dinner. When my dad came home to check on me, I told him that there was no way I could go back to that school. Can you please let me go to another school? Honey, you know I don't have time for this. I've been so busy with work. Plus the baby is coming and all that. Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention that Miss Mendez had moved in a few years ago, and she had literally become my stepmom. She was expecting a baby with my dad. But Dad! I made my best puppy dog eyes, and he melted. At least the charm of being cute was still there. My new school was a few miles away, and no one there knew about my embarrassing moment. People were still obsessed with my cuteness, but no one would ask me out on a date. And you know what made things worse? Maura had a boyfriend and he'd come over almost every day. It was awful and unfair. So I decided that I would have to steal him away from her. I added him online and started talking to him whenever he wasn't over at our house. I tried to be as seductive as possible, and after about 3 weeks, it seemed like he was falling for me. Then, one night, he asked me out on a date. It was my first date ever. And do you think I felt guilty that this was my sister's boyfriend? Not one bit. Because who was she to get a boyfriend before me? I was the better twin. Levi was such a gentleman. He brought me flowers and took me to a really cute park where we sat and ate snacks. I was sure that I had almost totally stolen him away from Maura. But life just kept on sucking because a week later, I came back from school early because I had to go for another date with Levi. I walked into Maura's room to borrow one of her shirts, and there she was, sitting on the bed with Levi. They were kissing. I was so angry, I picked up Maura's shoes and started throwing them at her. And him. How dare he kiss her? He had never even kissed me before. When I was done screaming at them, I tried to run outside, but I ended up tripping over one of the shoes. I felt pain in my arm like I'd never felt before.
Oh my gosh, Melissa, I think you broke your arm.
Leave me alone! I hate you!
You know, I knew you were trying to steal Levi from me. You became our little joke. He showed me all the messages you sent to him. I let him go on a date with you because I figured it would be funny. Fancy being our inside joke. You're the worst sister ever.
Spending a few days in the hospital really gave me some time to think. I guess I should have tried to find my own boyfriend instead of stealing my sister's. I decided that I'd try to develop my body in other ways and that eventually I'd find someone to love me. When I got out, I tried all kinds of fad diets. I wore waist trainers, I exercised, and did extra squats just to try and look more developed. After a while, I started to notice a few little changes. Nothing huge, but my clothes look better on me now. And at school, one guy actually started giving me some attention. But he was the class nerd, Dylan. I wasn't about to settle for him. My eyes were on Corey, the leader of the school's hockey team. And I decided that if I couldn't have Corey, I didn't want anyone else. Plus, this would make Maura so jealous. Corey was way better looking than Levi. But how would I get him to give me his attention? Sometimes he'd smile and wink at me when he passed, but that wasn't enough for me to know that he liked me. I started leaving anonymous love notes under his locker, and one day I hid while I watched him open it. But dozens of other love notes fell out. Clearly, I had a lot of competition. All the girls at my school wanted him. I decided that I needed to do something extraordinary. I thought about my plan for days and finally built up the confidence to do it. It was Saturday morning and Corey had a big game. I went there and sat in the stands. When it was break time, I walked over to the middle of the hockey field, nearly slipping on the ice several times. I was holding up a big sign which read, "Corey, will you go out with me?" His friends nudged him and he walked over to where I was standing. I froze and felt butterflies all over. He gazed into my eyes, and at that moment, I knew that he felt the same way about me. I could already picture a future together. Our house, kids, even our dog. Then, suddenly, he looked away and opened his arms. He had been looking at someone else all along. I turned around, and when I saw who it was, I could have exploded. Maura walked into his arms. He embraced her, took off his helmet, and gave her the most passionate kiss I had ever seen. I looked into the stands and saw Levi turn around and walk away. I glared at Maura with hatred, then ran after Levi. Maybe now he'd realized that I was much better for him than Maura was. Plus, we were both super embarrassed about our situation, so what could go wrong? Hey, wait up!
Leave me alone, Melissa.
Oh, come on. Let's talk about it.
I knew she was cheating on me all along. This was the proof that I needed. But I can't believe she did that in front of everyone. You know what? Maybe I should have really left her for you. You're much nicer, and you're prettier too.
Really? You think that?
Yes. Hey, you hungry?
Yeah. We went out on our first real date and continued to see each other after that. Maura started going out with Corey, but he broke up with her after 2 weeks, and it was hilarious. She tried to get Levi back, but he wanted nothing to do with her. So, in the end, I got my way. Isn't that great?